How's everybody doing? Don't worry, me, Eli did not forget about you guys in the Beginner Fish series. It's been the holiday season. Everybody's lives get hectic this time of year. The OSA is no exception. We're gonna try to get back on track and get these videos out to you on a regular basis again. Things are starting to calm down. Today at number 8, we are going to do the Snowflake Moray Eel. A lot of people in this hobby right now have transitioned over from reptiles and they miss their snakes. Snowflake Moray takes that spot. They're really cool critters. Just got to keep in mind they are eels. So they will go after your crustaceans. They will go after smaller fish. And they are escape artists. I would not recommend trying one of these guys with a rimless tank, even if you have the screen top, because they can probably get out of that gap. Here's Eli with some more information for you guys. Have a great holiday season.
Thanks for the intro, Ernie, and thank you guys for tuning in to number 8 on our Beginner Fish series. Again, we apologize for not getting this one out on a weekly basis. So in number 8, as Ernie just described, is the Snowflake Moray Eel. This is a really interesting pet for the saltwater aquarium. This is a fish that we would consider reef safe with caution, as generally they are okay to keep with things like corals. However, as Ernie just described, they're very opportunistic creatures and they will basically eat anything that can fit in their mouths. So oftentimes this includes shrimp, such as peppermint shrimp, not always cleaner shrimp, but it is always something that might be on the menu. And then any of your smaller fishes. I would say anything smaller than a full-grown clownfish is probably on the menu for these guys. That being said, they do not always tend to be very predatory when it comes to other fish in the tank, but this all comes down to the individual temperament of these eels. Just something to be very cautious of if you do decide you want an eel. It's always important to try to match this fish with fish of a larger size so that they don't end up being prey items for him down the road. But generally fish in the 3 to 4 inch range and up should be safe to house with your Snowflake Moray Eel in an aquarium. Generally the Snowflake Moray only gets to about 2 feet. However, in the wild sometimes you do see specimen closer to 3.5. So with that being said, generally a 75-gallon aquarium is the most appropriate. And as Ernie mentioned before, with most eels, and the snowflake being no exception, they are escape artists. So generally, if you're going to house these in your tank, you generally want to keep a glass lid and a canopy over the top of the tank with very tight tolerances around any of your equipment to make sure that these guys can't really sneak out. When the eel is comfy in the aquarium, however, a lot of times they're going to pick a spot that they really like to hang out in. This guy really likes this little rock hut, and they generally kind of stake claim to this territory and don't usually stray very far from that spot. However, sometimes when the lights are out, they get a little more inquisitive and they check out their surroundings a little bit more when the lights are out. Feeding these eels can be a little bit tricky sometimes. Generally, you do want to tong feed these guys. With smaller specimens, anything around a foot or smaller, a lot of times they're going to take very well to frozen krill, either tong feeding them or kind of dropping some krill around where you see this guy's head in the rockwork. Usually they will pick those out pretty easily. With a larger specimen like this guy here, feeding things like silver sides, frozen squid, sometimes even clams on the half shell. Usually you would want to target feed these guys and feed them on the end of a pair of tongs. Generally they do take pretty well to approaching the tongs and grabbing the food from you. And pretty oftentimes these guys will only eat as much as they want to in a given day. A lot of these eels that we have in the shop feed themselves to satiation and stop once they are no longer hungry. That being said, you do want to be careful not to overfeed your eel. It is okay to feed every other day or sometimes even twice a week depending on the eel. So generally keeping these eels and other eels well fed in your aquarium is a really good way to make sure that they are not going to pick at any of the smaller fish that are in your tank. But oftentimes feeding every other day or sometimes even twice a week for particular eels should be sufficient. These guys don't always need to feed every day, and if they do, smaller feedings to plan accordingly should help. If your Snowflake Moray Eel is well taken care of, they generally will live quite a long time in captivity. I would say 3 to 5 years is a minimum, sometimes even longer. Usually in captivity, they do only reach about 2 feet in length, but sometimes you might end up with an eel that reaches about 3.5 feet if taken care of properly and given the space to grow. So it's always important with any of these fish, you give them the best tank that you possibly can. Give them a decent amount of tank space, a decent amount of square footage, and this will allow them to feel more comfortable to grow to their full-grown size in the aquarium. Snowflake moray eel is a great fish. Honestly, a very beginner-friendly fish as long as you meet the tank requirements. You have a tight-fitting lid and a decently sized aquarium, and you are willing to target feed this guy in your tank. Very rewarding fish to keep, very interesting, and just a fun thing to keep in your aquarium. As always, thank you guys for tuning in to the Beginner Fish series. Please let us know in the comments if you have questions or suggestions, and keep on reefing.